Hey there, and welcome to another Unscripted Thoughts. By the way, my voice and composure may sound a bit rough because I'm currently getting over a head cold, but since we've seen a huge news dump coming out of Universal today, I thought it was worth discussing without producing a full-fledged video essay on it, because I wanted to give you my impression on the news. Now, of course, this is followed by a pretty interesting news dump from Disney yesterday, so I might as well address that later in the video and give you my thoughts on what that may mean as well. By the way, if you want to help this video reach a wider audience, leaving a like is really helpful in doing so. So really, just getting right into it, the biggest announcement that we got here out of Universal is that they will be building a new park in Frisco, Texas. From Twitter, Universal had this to say about it. The new park concept, set in a lush green landscape and featuring immersive themed lands, celebrates Universal's iconic brand of entertainment, humor, and innovation, and brings life to its beloved characters and stories in a way that will wow even the youngest theme park goers. Universal has made it clear elsewhere in their post that this park is aimed at families with small children, so that's what makes it so strange. For a long time people have been asking for a Disney park in Texas to draw away crowds from both California and Florida, but I think that Disney has felt it would cannibalize their park attendance and possibly change perceptions of their parks as destinations. I think the thought behind it was that if you have too many parks in the United States, people might view them as something more regional, something like Cedar Fair or Six Flags, and it would drive less people to spend, boatloads of money at their current resorts. However, the impression I'm getting from this new Universal park is that it is very much intended to be regional. Its focus on kids definitely feels like tapping into a regional market, rather than working to bolster their global brand and bring in the large crowds that they're seeing in Orlando. I mean, just, even looking at the concept art alone, it also appears to be on the cheaper end of things as well. It's just a lot of flat rides and maybe even looks like splash pads that Universal can stick some superficial theming over. I also see maybe a dark ride or two, but probably something on the cheaper side, or even simulators like a clone of Despicable Me. Now, of course, this concept art is very blue sky and nondescript, so I don't want to be too hasty with my judgment, but it definitely reminds me of many of those cheap parks in Dubai. It also seems clear that the park will probably produce attractions based around DreamWorks and Illumination's franchises, as people have spotted something that looks like it might be Camp Cretaceous, or an area inspired by Trolls, or I've seen speculation on Shrek finding a place in this park as well. Now, of course, I'm ready to be wrong about this park, and it could be fantastic, but I have to say that I'm not particularly excited or optimistic about it. Now, let's say, for example, that this park opens as I expect it to, as something regional with a lot of superficial theming. How does that affect the Universal brand if it's not up to the standards of what we see in Hollywood or Orlando, and will it dilute consumer perceptions of Universal's parks? Well, there have been a lot of rumors flying around recently that Universal wants to reacquire Port Aventura, which is located in Spain, which they bought a controlling stake in back in 1998. However, at that point in time, with a lot of financial issues plaguing the company, and because the park didn't really fit Universal's brand at all, it was sold in 2004. I don't know if reacquiring this park is just fan speculation or not, but I agree that it doesn't really fit Universal's branding either, especially not today. The resort now also includes a second park with Ferrari Land, and I think that only further dilutes this as being an appropriate acquisition for Universal. It does not gel. And, by itself, the resort does seem appealing to me, and I would like to visit it someday, but I can't say that Universal's ownership of it would do it any favors. If this were to happen in conjunction with Universal opening a low-tier park in Texas, I have to say that I would definitely lose confidence in the future of their parks brand. That being said, I think that cloning their studio parks is getting pretty old, but I still think they have pretty strong concepts, and Islands of Adventure is incredibly strong for their image as well. I also anticipate that Epic Universe will manage to feel a lot like Islands, and that it's distinctly Universal, yet not a studio park. They work for the brand in a way that I don't think this Texas park necessarily will. When this was announced, I actually thought it was going to be a water park, something more akin to the Sesame Place that SeaWorld rethemed their San Diego Aquatica to. This does appear to be a more traditional theme park, but with theming that I anticipate will likely be more in line with something like Sesame Place. Details are scarce, it's too easy to know how this will really turn out, but I have to admit that I'm rather indifferent. Hopefully the park will be excellent, even if it is just focused on kids. However, another surprise announcement that we received today is that Universal is actually going to be building an attraction in Las Vegas. It's going to be located at Area 15, which is an experiential entertainment complex best known for its Meow Wolf exhibit. However, it appears that Universal will be constructing something very much inspired by Halloween Horror Nights in the location. With that being said, however, I'm not necessarily sure that this will be something like year-round Horror Nights mazes. One of the issues that haunt events face every year is employee burnout, and I don't think that they could keep something on such a large scale going year-round. In the announcement, Universal also noted that it would draw from classic Universal Monsters franchises, but would also tackle more contemporary stuff as well. It's also worth noting that this will see seasonal changes too. So I think that there may be a good chance that this is an explorable area similar to Meow Wolf, probably including scare actors found throughout, but not anything like a more traditional maze that you would find at one of the normal events. It would probably be a mashup of different themes and properties that could be changed out occasionally. What's interesting to me though is that the concept art very clearly shows event icons specifically from the Orlando version. The release did also state that they could explore more original concepts, which is interesting, but I'm also glad that this seems to be handled by the Orlando team. The event in Hollywood is pretty decent, but it just doesn't hold a candle to the design choices that we see in Orlando. So I'm glad that it seems like the Hollywood team won't be producing it. Something else I would like to touch on is that this may allow Universal's influence in Orlando to grow larger as well. Area 15, a while ago, announced that they were planning to open an Orlando campus in 2024. And, with that being said, at this point in time, I haven't observed any construction or even land clearing happening at this location. So it has kind of made me wonder if it's been put on hold or isn't happening. However, I think that Meow Wolf in Orlando would be great, and if Universal wanted to create something similar to what they're building in Vegas in this complex as well, I think it would make a big impact on tourism here. Now, I've talked about this before, but I think that with Epic Universe opening in 2023, it allows International Drive to then become this sort of new entertainment hub of Orlando tourism, flanked on its north side and, both its north and south ends by Universal Parks, and drawing interest away from Walt Disney World. If Area 15 with a major Universal branded attraction is built south of there, it could further extend that entertainment district past SeaWorld and only further reinforce a more distinct and different sort of vacation itinerary. Something that works as a great alternative to Walt Disney World that I think only works in Universal's favor. So these announcements are pretty interesting food for thought. However, Universal Orlando on Twitter seems to keep teasing some sort of coaster announcement as well, so by the time this video is out, something else may have been released which you might want to watch out for. If you've been in the loop though, a new ambitious coaster for Universal Hollywood has been leaked, but because it's Universal Orlando tweeting about it, watch them announce some sort of DreamWorks re-theme of Woody Woodpecker's Nut House coaster or something like that. But still, they seem really intent on teasing some sort of coaster. They're pretty clear about that, so it'll be interesting to see what they announce. Now, this was a pretty significant news dump out of Universal, but since we're here, I might as well discuss the news that came out from Disney yesterday. It's not a lot, but seems like a general step in the right direction. The first order of business is that effective immediately, parking fees at all Walt Disney World hotels have been discontinued. This was actually one of my biggest gripes with Disney over the past few years, not because it was actually that expensive in the larger scheme of things, but because it was such just a transparent cash grab. It was no doubt a directive from Bob Chapek. Removing the parking fees is an easy win for Disney because while it obviously generated revenue, it can't have been that significant. I'm not going to try to do the math for all the parking spaces at all the resorts, but I have to imagine that any single park is generating more food and merchandise revenue at any given hour than Disney is collecting in parking fees every night. Removing these was an easy win for Disney because the negative reaction it had on consumer perception of the company likely outweighed the financial benefit that the resort was actually receiving from it. Also in the news is that Disney is relaxing restrictions on the reservation system. Starting February 4th, park hopping at Disneyland Resort will begin at 11 a.m. rather than 1 p.m., which is a nice change. Granted, I think it's stupid that this restriction still exists at all, but at least it's a positive change for once. Disney has also announced that while Disneyland is not lowering prices on its yield pricing system, it will offer its cheapest days more often, which I think was something like $104 at minimum. It's essentially a smoke and mirrors trick to look like they're lowering the price, but it's still higher than it's ever been. On the topic of reservations though, Walt Disney World will be easing park hopping restrictions as well. There's no announced date for this, but annual pass holders will be able to enter a park without a reservation after 2 p.m., except for the Magic Kingdom on Saturdays and Sundays. This is still not ideal, but again, it's a step in the right direction. These announced changes are all easy wins for Disney, because while the parks are still quite hostile to consumers, at the very least, these are calculated decisions that allow people to feel better in the short term. The reservation system still exists to collect your data. It staffed their parks to the bare minimum, but at least it is somewhat less restrictive than it is currently, so it's kind of a win, even though it does make me feel better. I know that ultimately, it's still very anti-consumer. We're still going to continue seeing a lot of the problems that we have been seeing. So finally though, Disney has announced the return of Happily Ever After and Epcot Forever on April 3rd, which I can't say that I really care much about. Epcot Forever, in particular, while I do like it a lot better than Harmonious, it's not a Epcot tribute show. It is an Epcot lip service show. Its dedication to Epcot is incredibly superficial, but again, it's good to see it replace Harmonious. And I think that Happily Ever After is a better show than what's the current Enchantment, I think. Better than that ever was. So, overall positive, even though they still have a long ways to go. The largest attraction news, though, will be Tron opening on April 4th, which, again, I'm kind of indifferent about. Tron was cool to me when it opened with Shanghai Disneyland because it was unique to that park, but cloned attractions lose a lot of appeal to me. I'm sure that the coaster itself will be fun, but it is quite short, and while the show elements are flashy, there's just not really much to it. There's not much substance. It's something I'm not particularly excited or interested in, but it's rather just something that fills up space that will draw people away from other attractions in Magic Kingdom that I'd much rather be riding. So, to wrap things up, I hope that you enjoyed another one of these videos where I just discussed the latest news and gave my opinion on it. If you have anything you would like to chime in and say, I would definitely be interested in seeing it down in the comments. Of course, I would also appreciate you giving the video a like if you haven't already done so, and if you want to subscribe so you can keep up to date with new video releases, I recommend doing that as well.